Even the best cowboys could tame this wild horse. What the native girl did shocked everyone. The air smelled of dry grass and hay, mixed with the faint scent of horses. It was early morning, but the ranch was already alive with activity. Cowboys were moving quickly, preparing for the day, saddling horses and checking the fences. Among them there was a tension in the air, one that seemed heavier than the morning heat. In the middle of the corral, a horse stood apart from the others, its coat shining dark under the sunlight, muscles tense and ready. This was no ordinary horse. Even the most experienced cowboys had tried to tame it before, and all had failed. It was known for its wild spirit, for refusing to obey anyone, for running when they tried to get close. Many had called it untamable, a creature that could not be broken or trained. But today, the ranch hands were trying again. The horse's eyes were wide and alert, flicking nervously from one cowboy to another. Its ears twitched, its tail swished, and it pawed at the dirt as if challenging anyone to come closer. One of the older cowboys, a tall man with sun-worn skin and hands calloused from years of work, stepped forward with a rope. He had ridden horses all his life and thought he knew how to handle every animal on the ranch. "Here we go again," he muttered to himself, trying to sound confident. "Let's see if you can't run from me today, wild one." He moved toward the horse, rope in hand, but the moment he got close, the horse shifted sideways, sending up a small cloud of dust. The man's horse tried to keep calm, but he could see the wild horse was ready to bolt at any moment. A younger cowboy, just learning the ropes, tried to help. He called out, "Don't let it get away," but his voice sounded nervous. The wild horse suddenly turned sharply, almost knocking the older cowboy off balance. The rope slipped from his hands and he cursed under his breath. The horse danced back and forth, refusing to be caught. It was clear to everyone watching that this horse was not like the others. No matter how many times they tried, it would not yield. At the edge of the corral, away from all the chaos, a young Native American girl watched quietly. She was small, not more than 15, with dark hair braided neatly down her back. Her eyes were calm, steady, and full of curiosity. She had grown up around animals, learning from her elders how to understand their moods, their fears, and their needs. Unlike the cowboys, she did not believe that force was the way to win respect or obedience. She believed in patience, in quiet observation, and in letting the animal choose to trust. The cowboys noticed her standing there and laughed. One of them called out, "Hey, little girl. This isn't a game. You think you can tame this one. You'll get thrown off faster than you can blink." She did not answer. She only continued to watch, her eyes never leaving the horse. There was something different about the way she looked at it, something the cowboys could not understand. They saw the horse as a challenge to conquer. She saw it as a being that needed to be understood. The wild horse pawed the ground again and let out a short snort, as if sensing her calm presence. It shifted its weight, not running but also not approaching. For the first time, someone felt its eyes and spirit, not just its strength. The girl took a slow step closer, her movements careful, almost like she was part of the wind. One of the older cowboys shook his head. "She's too small, too quiet. It's going to throw her off before she even reaches it." He watched with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. The girl's small figure moved steadily, but she did not make sudden gestures. She did not rush, and she did not speak loudly. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and the dust of the corral shimmered in the heat. The cowboys tried again, taking turns to get near the horse. Each attempt ended the same way. The horse would spin, kick, or bolt away. They were frustrated, hot, and growing tired. Even the strongest ropes and the most experienced hands could not make it obey. Meanwhile, the girl continued to study the horse. She noticed the tension in its muscles, the flick of its ears, the slight tremble in its legs. She understood that the horse was afraid, not mean. It wanted to run not because it was wild in the wrong way, but because it did not trust the humans around it. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she reached her hand toward the horse. Not to grab, not to pull, just a gentle stretch in its direction. The horse stiffened but did not bolt. The cowboys noticed her and laughed again. "It's going to kick you, girl. Step back." But she did not step back. She crouched slightly, making herself smaller, less threatening. She moved one hand slowly, letting the horse see her, letting it decide if it wanted to come closer or not. The horse snorted, its breath visible in the cool morning air. It shifted its hooves but stayed where it was. For the cowboys, it seemed like nothing had changed. But she knew it was the first small sign of trust. She remembered the lessons her grandmother had taught her. Animals respond to calmness, to patience, and to respect. They do not respond to shouting, pushing, or forcing. Every animal has its own rhythm, its own fears, and its own way of learning. The girl understood that if she hurried or became angry, she would lose the chance to connect with the horse forever. Time passed. The cowboys took a break, wiping sweat from their brows and talking among themselves. "I've never seen anything like it," one said. "That horse is untamable. Maybe we've finally met our match." Another nodded. "It's strong, fast, and smart. No one can touch it." The girl remained, silent but alert. She knew the horse was watching her too. Its eyes flicked toward her every few moments, curious, cautious. She did not try to speak to it yet, only allowed it to sense that she was not a threat. She lowered herself to sit on the ground, folding her legs, making herself as small and non-threatening as possible. The horse inched closer, still keeping a safe distance. The cowboys were still laughing, still shaking their heads. "Look at her. Sitting there like she owns the place. That horse won't come near her," one said. But she did not need the horse to come near yet. She only needed it to feel calm. She stayed patient, moving slowly to offer a hand with open fingers. The horse pawed at the dirt, lifted its head, and for a moment just looked at her. There was no rush, no sudden movement, only two beings studying each other. Hours passed, and the heat of the day grew stronger. The cowboys were exhausted and frustrated. They gave up, deciding to try again tomorrow. But the girl stayed, shaded under a small tree near the corral, watching the horse. It was not about winning today. It was about understanding. She could feel the rhythm of its breathing, the strength in its legs, the alertness in its eyes. She could see its mind thinking, planning, and deciding whether she was a friend or a threat. As the sun started to lower in the sky, painting the plains with soft orange and pink, the girl took one last careful step closer. The horse shifted slightly, but this time it did not move away. It stood still, watching her. For the first time in many weeks, maybe months, the wild horse did not see her as an enemy. The cowboys, packing up their ropes and saddles, finally noticed. They stopped, staring in disbelief. How is she doing that?" one muttered. Another shook his head slowly, realizing that maybe, just maybe, there was a different way to tame a horse than they had ever known. The girl, unaware of all the attention, smiled softly to herself. It was not about the applause or the surprise of the cowboys. It was about a connection, a first thread of trust that could grow into something strong. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the corral, as the wild horse stood quietly, sensing the calm presence of someone who understood it. And for the first time, the impossible seemed possible. The next morning, the ranch was filled with the usual sounds of animals and work, but there was a new tension in the air. The cowboys were talking quietly among themselves, still amazed by the sight of the wild horse standing calmly near the young girl the day before. Some shook their heads in disbelief, while others muttered that it had to be luck. The horse, dark and strong, grazed near the corral, ears twitching and eyes alert. It had not forgotten the day before, and it remembered the calm presence that had watched over it. The girl arrived early as always. She carried no rope, no whip, no tools. Only a small bucket of oats and her quiet determination. She walked slowly, deliberately, letting her movements show no hurry or fear. She understood that rushing would only scare the horse. The horse lifted its head at her approach, nostrils flaring, ears flicking forward. It studied her, uncertain yet curious. The cowboys gathered at a distance, some leaning on the fence, watching. "She's going to get herself hurt," one said, shaking his head. "There's no way she can control that thing." She ignored them. Their words had no power over her. She focused on the horse, noticing how it shifted its weight, how its muscles tensed and relaxed, and how its eyes followed her every step. She crouched slightly and placed the bucket of oats on the ground, sitting a few feet away. She did not reach for the horse. She simply waited. Time passed. The sun climbed higher and the wind carried the scent of hay and dry grass. The horse moved closer, sniffing the air around her, its hooves crunching softly on the dirt. It still did not touch the oats, still kept a careful distance, but the tension in its body eased. It was watching her, not as a threat, but as something unknown, perhaps even safe. The girl began speaking softly, her voice calm and steady. She did not shout or demand, she only talked in a low, soothing tone. "It's okay," she said. "I'm not going to hurt you, you don't have to be afraid." The horse flinched slightly at first, but then it relaxed a little more. Its ears tilted toward her and its eyes softened. She continued, letting the rhythm of her words flow gently, creating a quiet space in the noisy world of the ranch. The cowboys exchanged puzzled glances. "How is she doing that?" one whispered. "She's not even touching it." Another nodded slowly. "It's almost like the horse trusts her." Hours passed, and the girl stayed with the horse. She noticed when it twitched its tail, when it sniffed the wind, when it pawed at the ground. Every small movement told her something about its mood. She mirrored its calmness, moving slowly, breathing steadily, and never making sudden gestures. The horse began to lower its head slightly, eyes flicking toward the oats but still hesitant to come closer. The girl remained patient. She knew that trust could not be forced. It could only be earned step by step. She shifted slightly, offering her hand again, open and still. The horse inched forward, nostrils brushing the edge of the bucket. Slowly it took a single oat, then another, glancing at her as it chewed. A small smile spread across her face. This was the first real sign of acceptance, the first moment that showed the horse was willing to trust her. The cowboys were silent now, watching in amazement. They had never seen patience work like this. They had relied on ropes, force, and loud commands, but all of it had failed. The girl's calm approach was different, and it was working in a way they could not understand. As the day went on, she continued to sit with the horse, offering gentle words and quiet attention. It began to move closer to her, sniffing her hands, brushing lightly against her arm. She did not push it, she let it choose its own steps. Each movement of trust was a small victory. The cowboys, leaning on the fence, could only stare. They had tried to tame this horse for weeks, and here was a young girl doing it with nothing but patience and care. By late afternoon, the horse was standing close enough that she could touch its neck. She reached out slowly, letting her fingers glide over its smooth, warm coat. The horse stiffened for a moment but did not pull away. She continued, speaking softly, "Good. You're doing so well." The horse let out a small, contented snort. It was not tamed in the sense of being controlled, but it had accepted her presence without fear. The cowboys were whispering among themselves, some shaking their heads, some nodding slowly. "I've never seen anything like this," one said. "She doesn't even try to control it, and yet it's listening." The girl spent the next few days following the same routine. She arrived early, carried her bucket of oats, and spoke softly to the horse. She moved with care, letting it set the pace, never forcing, never rushing. She noticed every small sign of progress. The horse standing still as she approached, eating from her hand, even lowering its head to let her touch its mane. The horse began to follow her when she walked around the corral. It stayed close, eyes watching, ears tilted toward her voice. She laughed softly when it nudged her gently, realizing how far it had come. She knew the cowboys were watching, and some of them were learning too. They saw that strength and force were not always the answer. Sometimes understanding and patience could accomplish more. One afternoon, a sudden gust of wind blew dust across the corral, startling the other horses. The wild horse shied for a moment, but the girl stood still, calm and steady. She spoke softly, guiding it with her voice rather than a rope. Slowly, it relaxed again, realizing she was not a threat. The cowboys, standing nearby, were amazed at her bravery and calm. Even the ranch owner, a tall man with years of experience, came to watch. He had seen many wild horses over his lifetime, and most had been tamed with force or long training. But this one was different. He watched the girl, small and quiet, working wonders with her patience and care. He felt a mix of pride and wonder. "Maybe we've been doing it all wrong," he muttered under his breath. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The girl stood, brushing the horse's coat gently, feeling its warmth under her hands. It was calm, peaceful, and trusting. She whispered softly, "We'll do more tomorrow, step by step together." The horse lowered its head, nuzzling her gently as if agreeing. The cowboys packed up their gear, still amazed and a little humbled. Some of them had scoffed at her, but now they realized there was something special about the way she worked. She did not see the horse as a challenge to conquer. She saw it as a being with feelings and fears. And in that understanding, she had begun to succeed where they had failed. As the girl walked away from the corral, the horse followed her slowly, its trust growing with each quiet step. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying the promise of new beginnings. The cowboys watched silently, realizing that the true power of connection was not in strength, but in patience, respect, and understanding. And so, the story of the untamable horse began to change. No longer was it simply a wild, uncatchable animal. It was a horse learning to trust, guided by the gentle hands and quiet heart of a young girl who understood that real taming came from love, patience, and courage. The days passed, and the bond between the young girl and the wild horse grew stronger. Every morning she arrived at the corral before sunrise, carrying her small bucket of oats and her quiet determination. The horse would lift its head at the sound of her footsteps, nostrils flaring, ears twitching forward, but now it did not bolt. It had learned that she meant no harm. The cowboys continued their work, sometimes glancing over at the pair. Some still shook their heads, unable to understand how a girl so small could succeed where they, with years of experience, had failed. Others watched silently, beginning to feel a mixture of curiosity and respect. They could not deny the change in the horse's behavior. Slowly, it was learning to trust. The girl had a routine. She would sit a short distance from the horse, speaking softly, offering oats and letting it move at its own pace. She did not rush it. She did not demand it come closer or obey commands. She allowed it to explore, to test the boundaries, and to make small choices. Each choice it made to trust her was a victory, and she celebrated it quietly, knowing that real progress came from patience, not force. One afternoon, the girl decided it was time to try something new. She wanted the horse to follow her around the corral, not just stand near her or eat from her hand. She stood slowly, holding out her hand as she took a step. The horse paused, watching her carefully. Then, almost as if considering her words, it lifted a hoof and moved forward. She smiled softly, encouraging it with her voice rather than her hands. "Good, that's it, step by step." The horse followed her slowly, ears tilted toward her voice, eyes watching every movement. When it stumbled over a small rock, she stopped immediately, letting it regain balance. She did not scold it or pull on it. She merely whispered, "It's okay, take your time." The horse steadied itself and continued. For the first time, it was moving with her willingly, not out of fear, but because it chose to. The cowboys were watching again, leaning on the fence, their expressions a mix of disbelief and admiration. One muttered, "I don't believe it, she's actually walking that horse without a rope." Another nodded slowly, "It's following her, on its own." Encouraged by this small success, the girl began to take longer walks with the horse around the corral. She kept her voice calm and steady, her movements slow and deliberate. She watched every flick of its ears, every twitch of its tail, and every shift of its weight. She learned to understand the horse's moods without needing to speak loudly or use force. One morning, as the girl led the horse toward the far end of the corral, a sudden noise startled it. A metal gate clanged shut somewhere nearby, and the horse froze, muscles tense, eyes wide with fear. The girl did not panic. She dropped to the ground, making herself smaller, and spoke in the softest voice she could manage. "It's okay. I'm right here. You're safe." The horse snorted and pawed at the ground, but it did not run. Slowly, it lowered its head and took a few cautious steps forward. The cowboys, watching from a distance, were stunned. None of them had ever calmed a horse like that in the middle of a sudden scare. She's amazing," one whispered, unable to hide the awe in his voice. Over the next few days, the girl continued to build on their progress. She allowed the horse to nibble from her hand, to brush against her, and even to let her touch its mane. Each interaction was gentle, careful, and full of understanding. She never forced it to do anything it did not want to. Slowly, the horse began to lower its guard, showing more signs of trust and curiosity than fear. One afternoon, she decided to try something bolder. She wanted the horse to let her place a simple halter on its head. She knew this was a test of trust. If she rushed, the horse might run. If she stayed calm, it might allow her to succeed. She approached slowly, speaking softly, offering oats as a distraction. The horse watched her, muscles tense, ears twitching. She waited patiently, letting it decide when it felt safe. After what felt like hours, the horse finally allowed her to slide the halter over its nose. She did not tighten it immediately. She simply let it rest there, giving the horse time to adjust. She whispered, "Good. You're doing so well. Thank you for trusting me." The horse lowered its head slightly, brushing against her hand. This was more than progress, it was a breakthrough. The cowboys, who had been observing silently, could not believe their eyes. One muttered, "I've been riding horses my whole life, and I've never seen anything like this. She didn't use force, and it worked." Another nodded slowly, a hint of respect in his eyes. "She's teaching us something we forgot." The days turned into weeks, and the bond between the girl and the horse grew stronger. They moved together around the corral, the horse following her cues without fear, the girl guiding with patience and understanding. The cowboys continued to watch, some in awe, some in quiet admiration. The wild horse that no one could tame was now responding to a gentle hand and a calm heart. One evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the girl stood beside the horse, brushing its coat softly. The horse nuzzled her hand, showing a trust that had never existed before. She whispered, "We're getting there step by step. I know you're still learning, but I'm proud of you." A sudden gust of wind blew through the corral, rattling the fences and sending dust swirling. The other horses moved nervously, but the wild horse stayed calm beside her. The girl stood still, steady, her voice soft and reassuring. The cowboys, watching from the fence, were silent. They could not believe how the horse had changed. It had learned to trust without fear, to follow without force, and to accept guidance without resistance. That night, as the girl walked home, the horse followed quietly behind her. The cowboys watched the scene in silence, understanding that they had witnessed something extraordinary. It was not just about taming a horse. It was about patience, understanding, and respect. The wild horse had chosen to trust, and the girl had shown them all that real strength came from kindness, not force. The girl knew that more work lay ahead. She wanted the horse to trust her fully, to move with her, to accept more contact, and perhaps one day even allow her to ride. But she also knew that forcing anything would ruin the bond they were building. She smiled softly, thinking about the progress they had made in the days to come. The horse lay down that night in the corral, calm and relaxed, a sign of the growing trust it had in her. The cowboys, who had spent weeks trying to tame it, shook their heads in quiet amazement. They had underestimated the power of patience, understanding, and gentle guidance. And so, the days continued, each one a lesson in trust and courage. The girl's quiet determination, her soft voice, and her gentle hands were slowly changing the wild horse into a companion. Not tamed by force, not controlled by fear, but guided by patience, respect, and love. The story of the untamable horse was no longer one of frustration and failure. It was becoming a story of hope, of understanding, and of a young girl who knew the value of kindness and patience. The cowboys had begun to learn that there was more than one way to achieve greatness, and that sometimes the smallest and quietest person could accomplish the most extraordinary things. As the sun disappeared behind the distant hills, the girl sat quietly beside the horse, brushing its mane gently. The horse nuzzled her hand, a gesture of trust and companionship. She whispered softly, "Tomorrow we will take another step. Together we can do anything." And the horse, once untamable and wild, seemed to understand, standing close beside her, calm, trusting, and ready for the journey ahead. The mornings on the ranch had grown calmer now that the wild horse was learning to trust the young girl. The cowboys still whispered about her quiet success, but they had stopped mocking her. Some of them even watched closely, curious to see how she would take the next step. The girl herself felt a mixture of excitement and patience. She knew the horse had come far, but she also knew the journey was not over. There were still fears to face, steps to take, and trust to strengthen. Today, she planned something new. She wanted the horse to move with her, to follow her cues more closely, and perhaps allow her to place a saddle on its back. It was a delicate challenge. She could feel the horse's heart rate rise as she approached, nostrils flaring and ears twitching, but she remained calm. She spoke softly, letting her voice carry over the corral. "Good morning. Are you ready to try something new today?" The horse blinked, watched her carefully, but did not move away. That was enough for her. She began walking slowly around the corral, speaking gently, encouraging it to follow. At first, the horse kept a safe distance, unsure of what to do. Step by step, she moved a little closer, letting the horse adjust to her rhythm. She offered a handful of oats, letting it nibble as she walked. The cowboys, leaning on the fence, were again stunned. She's guiding it without ropes," one whispered, "and it's following her." Another nodded slowly, still unable to hide a mix of disbelief and admiration. They had never seen a horse respond so willingly without force. After several minutes, the horse followed her more closely, moving with a steady pace. The girl smiled, her heart filled with quiet pride. This was progress. She continued to speak softly, praising every small action. "Good, that's it. You're doing so well, step by step." The horse lowered its head slightly, a sign of relaxation and trust. Encouraged by this success, she decided it was time to try placing a simple, light saddle on the horse. She approached carefully, letting the horse see the saddle first, letting it smell the leather and examine the straps. She did not rush. She spoke softly, "It's okay. This is just a new thing, you don't have to be afraid." The horse's ears flicked, muscles tense, but it remained standing. That alone was a victory. She placed the saddle gently on the horse's back, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. The horse shifted slightly but did not bolt. She spoke softly, rubbing its neck, letting it know she was still there, still calm. Slowly, carefully, she adjusted the straps, all while keeping her hands gentle. The horse stood still, a quiet sign that it was accepting her guidance. The cowboys, watching from the fence, were amazed. "How is she doing that?" one whispered. "I've been riding horses my whole life, and I've never seen anything like this." Another nodded slowly. "It's like the horse knows she's not a threat. It's trusting her." Once the saddle was secure, the girl did not immediately try to ride. She knew that trust could be lost if she rushed. Instead, she led the horse around the corral with the saddle, letting it get used to the weight and feel. Step by step, The horse walked calmly, ears flicking toward her, eyes following her movements. She praised it softly with each step, letting it know it was doing well. By late afternoon, the horse was moving confidently around the corral with her guidance, calm and responsive. The girl decided it was time to try something even bolder. She wanted to see if the horse would allow her to sit on its back while it stood still. She approached slowly, placing one foot in the stirrup, speaking softly all the while. "It's okay, you're safe, we're together." The horse shifted slightly, muscles tense, but did not move away. She carefully lifted herself, holding onto the saddle horn for balance. Her heart raced, but she remained calm, letting her confidence and patience guide her actions. The horse stood still, waiting, listening, and trusting. Once she was seated, she stayed still, letting the horse adjust to the new situation. She spoke softly, praising its calmness. "Good, you're doing amazing, step by step." The horse lowered its head slightly, a clear sign that it was relaxed and willing. The cowboys, watching from a distance, could hardly believe their eyes. A horse that had thrown them all now allowed a young girl to sit calmly on its back. Encouraged by this success, she began to guide the horse slowly around the corral. Step by step, they moved together. The horse responded to her gentle cues, adjusting its pace and direction according to her guidance. It was not obedience forced by fear, it was trust and cooperation. The cowboys whispered among themselves, realizing that everything they thought they knew about taming a horse was being challenged. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind swept across the corral, rattling the gates and sending dust swirling. The other horses moved nervously, but the wild horse froze, muscles tense, ears back. The girl remained calm, holding onto the saddle, speaking softly. "It's okay, I'm here, you're safe." Slowly, the horse's muscles relaxed and it resumed walking, trusting her guidance. The cowboys were silent, staring in disbelief. One finally said, "I can't believe it." That horse stayed calm because of her voice, her presence, not ropes, not force. Another nodded slowly, a mix of awe and respect in his eyes. "She's teaching us something we forgot." For the next few days, the girl continued this routine. She walked, guided, and sometimes rode the horse, all with patience, calmness, and care. Every small success strengthened their bond. The horse learned to follow her cues, trust her presence, and accept her guidance without fear. It was no longer a wild, untamable creature. It was a companion, learning and growing together with her. One late afternoon, as the sun began to set and painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, the girl decided to try one more test. She wanted the horse to move confidently with her while she was seated, not just standing still. She led it slowly toward the center of the corral, speaking softly, praising each step. The horse lifted its head, ears flicking, and then began to walk calmly with her on its back. Step by step, they moved together. The girl's confidence grew, and the horse responded to her gentle guidance. The cowboys, still watching, could not hide their astonishment. They whispered among themselves, realizing that this young girl had achieved what they could not through strength or force, but through patience, understanding, and trust. As the sun disappeared behind the distant hills, the girl guided the horse back to the corral's edge. She dismounted carefully, speaking softly to the horse. "You did so well today, I'm proud of you." The horse nuzzled her hand, a quiet gesture of trust and companionship. The cowboys, packing up their gear, shook their heads slowly. They had learned an important lesson. Strength was not always the answer. Sometimes, patience, care, and understanding could achieve more than force ever could. They watched silently as the girl led the horse to a quiet corner, brushing its coat and speaking softly. That night, as the ranch settled into calm, the horse lay down in the corral, relaxed and peaceful. The girl walked home, thinking about the day's successes and the steps still ahead. She knew that more challenges would come, that the horse might have fears to face and boundaries to test, but she also knew that their bond was growing stronger every day. The story of the untamable horse was no longer one of frustration or failure. It was a story of trust, courage, and patience. The young girl had shown that even the wildest creatures could learn to trust when treated with kindness and respect. And for the cowboys, the lesson was clear. Real strength was not in control or force. It was in understanding, patience, and gentle guidance. As the stars appeared in the night sky, the girl looked toward the corral. The horse stood quietly, its dark coat reflecting the moonlight, calm and trusting. She whispered softly, "Tomorrow we will take another step. Together we can do anything." And the horse, once feared as untamable, seemed to understand, standing close beside her, ready for the next stage of their journey together. The next morning, the air on the ranch was crisp and fresh. The sky was painted with soft shades of pink and gold as the sun began to rise. The young girl arrived at the corral, carrying her small bucket of oats and her quiet determination. Today felt different. She had spent weeks building trust with the wild horse, learning its moods, understanding its fears, and celebrating each small victory. Now, she was ready for the final step. The moment that would prove their bond had grown strong enough to allow her to ride freely. The horse was already waiting, standing near the edge of the corral, ears flicking forward, eyes alert. Its coat shone in the early sunlight, muscles moving gracefully beneath its skin. It had come far from the fearful, untamable creature it once was. Now it was calm, alert, and trusting, responding to the girl's soft voice and gentle guidance. She approached slowly, speaking in her quiet, soothing tone. "Good morning. Today we will try something new." "Are you ready?" The horse lifted its head, nostrils flaring, and stepped slightly closer. It had grown used to her presence, but it still tested boundaries, reminding her that patience must continue. She smiled softly, knowing that this was part of their journey. The girl gently placed a light saddle on the horse's back. She did not rush. She spoke softly the entire time, letting the horse adjust to each movement. The horse shifted slightly at first but remained calm, trusting her guidance. Step by step, she adjusted the straps, making sure the saddle was secure but comfortable. Every small gesture was met with patience, every movement was deliberate, and every touch was gentle. Once the saddle was secure, she did not immediately climb on. She led the horse around the corral, allowing it to feel the weight and movement. The horse walked steadily, ears flicking toward her voice, eyes calm. Slowly, the girl knew the time had come. She approached the side of the horse, placing one foot carefully in the stirrup. She spoke softly, encouraging it with her voice rather than touch. "It's okay. We're ready for this. Take your time." With careful balance, she lifted herself onto the horse's back, holding onto the saddle. Her heart raced, but she stayed calm, letting her confidence guide her. The horse shifted slightly at first, testing her weight, but remained still. She whispered, "Good. You're doing amazing." The horse lowered its head slightly, a clear sign of trust. It was calm, steady, and ready to follow her gentle cues. Step by step, she guided the horse around the corral. At first, the movements were slow, cautious. The horse was alert, testing the new experience, but it responded to her guidance, walking steadily and calmly. The cowboys, who had gathered at a distance, watched in silence. They could hardly believe their eyes. A horse that had thrown them all, that had been untamable for weeks, was now moving calmly with a young girl on its back. The girl smiled softly, praising the horse with her voice rather than gestures. "Good, that's it." Step by step, the horse responded, lowering its head slightly. Ears flicking forward, eyes alert. The cowboys whispered among themselves, "Good morning." Today we will try something new. "Are you ready?" The horse lifted its head, nostrils flaring, and stepped slightly closer. The horse responded, lowering its head slightly, ears flicking forward and moving confidently. Each step was a victory, each small movement a sign of trust and connection. The cowboys whispered among themselves, realizing that everything they thought they knew about taming a horse was being challenged. Encouraged by the progress, the girl guided the horse around the corral several times, gradually increasing speed as the horse became more confident. She spoke softly all the while, her voice calm and reassuring. "You're doing so well. Keep moving. We're together." The horse followed her cues perfectly, ears tilted toward her, eyes calm and muscles relaxed. It was no longer a wild, fearful animal. It was a companion, learning and growing together with her. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept across the corral, rattling the fences and sending dust swirling. The other horses moved nervously, but the wild horse froze for a moment, muscles tense. The girl remained calm, guiding it with her voice. "It's okay, I'm here." "You're safe." Slowly, the horse relaxed, resuming its steady pace. The cowboys watched silently, all written across their faces. They had never seen a horse respond so calmly to a sudden scare, all because of trust and understanding. The girl continued guiding the horse, gradually expanding their path to the larger fields beyond the corral. She kept her voice soft and steady, praising the horse with every step. The horse moved confidently beside her, trusting her guidance completely. Step by step, they ventured further, exploring new spaces together, each step a sign of growing courage and connection. As the sun climbed higher, the ranch owner himself came to watch. He had seen many wild horses in his life, and most had been tamed with ropes, whips, or long, strict training. But this horse was different. He watched the girl, small and quiet, riding calmly and confidently. He felt a mixture of pride and wonder. "Maybe there's a new way to do things," he murmured. "Patience, kindness, and understanding. That's the lesson here." The girl guided the horse to a small hill overlooking the ranch. From this height, the plain stretched endlessly, golden grass swaying in the breeze. She paused, letting the horse rest and breathe. "You've done so well," she whispered, running her hand gently along its mane. The horse nuzzled her hand, a gesture of trust and companionship. The cowboys watched from below, silently acknowledging that they had learned something extraordinary. For the first time, the horse ran freely beside her, responding to her cues without fear or hesitation. The wind whipped through its mane, the sun shone on its dark coat, and it moved with grace and confidence. The girl guided it gently, praising every small movement, encouraging it to enjoy the freedom it had once resisted. This was more than taming. It was harmony, trust, and friendship in motion. The cowboys watched silently, some shaking their heads, some smiling, all filled with admiration. They realized that strength and force were not the true measures of skill. Kindness, patience, and understanding had accomplished what ropes and commands could not. The young girl, small and quiet, had shown them the power of trust and connection. As the day drew to a close, the girl guided the horse back to the corral. She dismounted carefully, speaking softly to the animal. "We've done so well today, I'm proud of you." The horse nuzzled her hand once more, calm, relaxed, and trusting. The cowboys approached, their expressions a mix of awe and respect. "Unbelievable," one said quietly. "I've been riding horses all my life, and I've never seen anything like this." Another nodded. "It's not just riding, it's the trust. She's earned it step by step." The girl smiled softly, brushing the horse's coat gently. "It's not about force," she said quietly. "It's about patience, understanding, and kindness. That's all they need." The cowboys, who had once doubted her, now understood. They had witnessed the impossible. A wild, untamable horse transformed through trust and care into a companion, moving with grace and confidence under the guidance of a small, determined girl. They knew they would never forget this lesson. As night fell, the horse lay down in the corral, calm and peaceful. The girl walked home, thinking about the journey they had shared. Weeks ago, this horse had been wild, fearful, and untamable. Now it was calm, confident, and trusting. Every step, every soft word, every gentle touch had mattered. Patience and understanding had won where force and frustration had failed. The story of the untamable horse had become a story of courage, trust, and connection. The young girl had shown that even the wildest creatures could be guided with kindness, that even the hardest hearts could be reached with patience. And for the cowboys and everyone at the ranch, it was a lesson they would carry forever. True strength is in understanding, patience, and gentle guidance. The girl stood at the edge of the corral, looking at the horse under the moonlight. It stood calmly beside her, muscles relaxed, eyes soft, coat shining in the pale light. She whispered, "Tomorrow we'll explore more. Together we can do anything." And the horse, once untamable, seemed to understand, standing close beside her, calm, trusting, and ready for the journey ahead. For the first time in the ranch's history, the Cowboys had witnessed the impossible, a bond between a girl and a horse, not built on force or fear, but on patience, respect, and love. It was a moment that would be remembered, told, and admired for years to come. And as the girl walked home that night, the wind carrying the soft sounds of the plains, she knew that the greatest victory was not in taming the horse, but in earning its trust and friendship.